Hello, everyone. I am Will O'Loughlin, and I am a journalist on the West Coast. I'm very excited today to have Wayne Evans from Rabbit Rabbit Records and Press with us. I've never met Wayne in my entire life, and so I'm stoked because we're going to learn a lot about him. We're going to learn a lot about his label and his press, and we're also going to learn a lot about the new Dead Silence box set that's coming up. So, enough from me. Wayne, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Will.
So I guess to start off with, if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself and also about your press and your label and maybe how you decided you were going to embark on something like that.
Sure. So I'm originally from Rapid City, South Dakota. We had a really great scene there, from like mid 80s. I mean, it's still continuing today. I left Rapid in 97 to come to Chicago to tattoo. And just, I don't know, maybe like 5, 6 years ago, I started Rabbit Rabbit Press. And it was really just to help some eighth graders from my son's school get to DC, on a school trip. There was a couple kids that couldn't afford to go. So I got a bunch of tattooers together. We painted up some flash, put it in a book, and then sold it. The book came with an original sheet of flash, and all the money that was brought in, helped go towards, taking, we're putting these two kids on, that trip. So it originally was just going to be print, tattoo related stuff, some punk rock stuff, like I had plans on doing some zines, maybe some like, writings or poetry or whatever, anything that anybody wanted to put out. And then a few years later, I started getting this idea where I wanted to start a record label on top of it. When I was younger, could never afford to put out records. I couldn't afford to, let alone even record. So Rapid has like a punk rock reunion every few years, and to raise a little bit of money to help, so I mean it's super expensive, like people coming back, all the equipment we needed for it. So what I came up with was auctioning off a day with Steve Albini here in Chicago, where whatever band from Rapid won this like auction, they would come here, record with Steve. Rabbit Rabbit would put out a record for them, and then John Yates of Steelworks and Allied Recordings was going to do the cover art and everything. So band called Someday Best from Rapid City ended up winning that. They came out here, recorded with Steve. I put that out with another 7-inch that they recorded. And then from there, it was just gangbusters. I had all these ideas of different bands I wanted to put out. And so that's where we're at right now with it. I mean, I put out bands that would actually be touring right now if, this pandemic wasn't going on. So that's kind of rough on them. But I also had this idea to start this other like portion of the label where we started preserving some of these older bands that really needed to be kind of brought forward, and for especially new listeners to really see the music that, like I grew up on, that I cared a lot about. And I felt like Dead Silence was like a band that not only resonated with me as a child. I mean, I was just a kid when I first started, going to shows and seeing them play. But even today, I mean, that music's still relevant. It still like brings that like same emotion as when I saw Kevin stand up on stage and start, his opening, like introduction to a song. I mean, I was hooked the minute I mean, there's something about him, there's something about that band.
Yeah.
So so that's why I really wanted to do something with Dead Silence. And my friend Brett Clark, he's from Rapid City also, he was still in contact with Kevin. So luckily for me, Brett kind of hooked us up. And then from there, we just, I kind of pitched him the idea, and then everybody else in the band kind of, they were on board too, thank God.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because, having 4 years of Donnie in the White House, I was like, we need Kevin more than ever.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, like seriously, So circling back to, well, a few things actually. One, I just wanted to say that like the getting to record with Steve at his studio, that is quite a prize, actually. I mean,
Yeah,
that's nice. That's
yeah,
like the real thing, you know?
yeah. I, I really, I've liked all the projects Steve's done. I mean, he's a brilliant engineer and musician, and I thought it would just be really cool to have a band come out and just experience what it's like to like work with somebody like Steve. And what's crazy is I think a lot of people they don't realize this, but you can call their studio and book with Steve. It's not like he'll record anybody,
Huh.
and he's so gracious. He's just a really good person. It was a lot of fun watching him work, actually.
Yeah. So the other thing I was curious about in terms of the label and the touring bands you have now is because I actually did a little research, ladies and gentlemen, before I got this interview going. But I've noticed that you have bands from like Texas and South Dakota, obviously, Utah, Cardiff, Wales. Like what catches your ear, or what are you looking for, or how do you sort of find those things?
So, um, so besides Someday Best, honestly, the other bands just kind of fell into my lap. To be honest with you, the Persecuted, they're out of Austin, Texas, and Salt Lake City. Two of the members live in Salt Lake, and the other in Austin. And I was buying some records on Discogs from the singer, and we just kind of struck up a conversation. And one thing led to another. He had said he was in this band called the Persecuted, so I asked him to send me a link, and you know I just really just enjoyed what I heard. I mean, they're like that, like British 80s, like obviously, I mean, I'm wearing a Conflict shirt, so I mean that kind of shows my hand a bit, but yeah, they're great. The System of Slaves, they same thing. A friend of mine, Jason Beert, he lives in Rapid City. Also, he runs a radio show called Left of the Dial, and he was playing them, and so we started talking, and I don't even remember how it worked out, but if I remember right, the drummer had just like cold messaged me, and I was literally gonna write him within like a few days. So it just some things that just kind of fell into my lap. So, but I just enjoy putting out records, and I hope everybody that buys them enjoys them also. So
Yeah. Well, so about this Dead Silence box set, what is going to be on it, and why did you pick that? I guess would be. We'll just start there.
So the Dead Silence box set. Once I started talking with Kevin a little bit, they had that Unlearning discography that came out, and it had everything on it with the exception of those last 4 releases. So that was something that I thought would be fun, was just to put something together to get those 4 releases, and then hopefully, some unreleased stuff if they had it, and then some live tracks if we had room. And luckily there was 2 unreleased tracks. So that, they did a cover of a song called Angry from a band called Descent. They were also out of Rapid
Oh,
City.
sure.
And it's a brilliant cover. It's wonderful. And then they also did a cover of If I Had a Hammer. So that'll be on there. And then right now we're looking at 2 live tracks that we have. I think maybe 3. But honestly, if anybody out there has any live, audio of Dead Silence, please send it my way. If I could add a 5th, 7-inch to the box set and have it live stuff, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I think it's great, sort of the way you said earlier, kind of reintroducing the band, to a new crowd, a new audience, and obviously now just acquiring those records, the original records, are complex and often very expensive, if you can find them at all.
Right.
So I think that's terrific. Well, I want to talk about Rapid City a little bit for sure,
Mm-hmm.
because you had mentioned Descent a couple of times, and I used to live in Boulder, which is how I knew these guys to begin with. And of course Descent would come around. But can tell me a little bit about the Rapid City scene when you were young, in your youth. Not that you're old now, but
Yeah, I don't know, something very special about Rapid City. I started going to shows in '88, like summer of '88, I think was the first show I went to. And it was just like a sense of family. I mean, I remember walking to a show and it felt like there was hundreds of kids there. I'm sure it was only maybe like 50 to 100 of us, but it felt like this massive group of people that, really cared about each other, cared about the bands that were coming through. And then by the early 90s, there was, in the summertime, there'd be 3 shows a week,
Hmm.
and everybody would go to them. I mean, that we would pack it. And it was just, it was a sense of, you know, family. It was a sense of like this, like everybody really loved going to the shows. Everybody loved being around each other. You just don't really see that in the scene anymore. I moved to Chicago thinking, man, it's gonna be great. There's gonna be all these great bands coming through. And to be honest, I was slightly disappointed. It just didn't have that same feel. People were up in their own like little cliques at the shows. Nobody really talked. It didn't seem like anybody was having that much fun. Where you'd be hard pressed to find somebody frowning or not having a good time at a Rapid show. So
So can you tell me a little bit about I know they played there with some frequency, seeing Dead Silence in Rapid?
um, I don't remember the first time I saw them, but I do know that every time I saw Dead Silence, I felt like they had my attention, like constant. I wanted to hear what Kevin had to say. I wanted to see, them play like my favorite songs. Like, it was, I don't know. They were one of those bands where when I saw them, they were kind of like Descent too for me. Like those 2 bands kind of made me feel the same way. Like, I'm watching them, perform, and I'm like, I want to be like them. I want to play music. And those were those were the 2 bands that really made me want to play music, and really got my attention and started like understanding like, wow, punk rock is for me. But yeah, I mean, well, it's too hard to even explain like how it made you feel. Like if you weren't there, it was, I could try to explain it till the cows come home. People think I'm crazy. It was just magic, you know.
Yeah. Well, while we're speaking of Rapid City, and I had talked about this with Ted a little because I was hearing noise about this, but you all do this every other year or every summer. You get together and have shows. I mean, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I didn't make the first reunion. If I remember right, it was in 2014. And then I made the one in 16. I went back and played with one of the bands I was in the 90s. And then in 2018 I was back, not playing, just back for the reunion. But we were trying to do it every, couple years. So 2000, was it 16, I think, was 30 years of punk rock in Rapid City. And I think we were gonna try to do something this year, but with the pandemic hitting, I don't know. I mean, luckily for me, the planning of the reunion doesn't fall on my shoulders. That's a lot of work. But
Yeah.
hopefully, in the next year or 2, we could have another one and maybe get Dead Silence to come out and play. That'd be something else.
Yeah, that would be. I would even, well, full disclosure, I'm from Sioux Falls. And so my mother lives in Madison, so I could
Oh,
visit my mother. And although it's all the way on the other side of the state, as you know, but go to the show in the summer would be wonderful. So, I
oh man,
mean,
it'd be worth it.
absolutely. So just a couple more things, and that
Sure.
is, what do you have any for your label and your press? That is, since
Mhm.
since we've talked about them, do you have any future plans? Are there releases in terms of new records? I know we talked about the Dead Silence box set, or new books or any kind of printing, magazines, zines, what have you.
So we do have a new release coming out from a band called User Unauthorized. They're like a teenage hardcore punk band from Austin, Texas. Um, Hopefully it'll be out in the next month or 2. The plants are a little behind with everything going on, so I'm hoping by the spring we'll have it. So that's coming. Hopefully the Dead Silence stuff will be out before the fall. Um, Hopefully System of Slaves will be able to get back in the studio so they can finish up. We're going to do a full length with them. Um, got 2 other projects coming, but I haven't been given the okay to say anything. But I will say that it has to do with Rapid City again. So it, it'll be pretty special, kind of like this, Dead Silence one. So.
Okay, terrific. Well, listen, is there anything you want to say before we get out of here, or that I missed that you want to disseminate, I guess you could say?
Honestly, anybody out there that has any kind of material, flyers, stickers, especially photos, any live material you have, even if it's VHS, if it's a good quality, we might be able to pull, a good sound out of it. So anything, please send it our way. We would love to include it in the booklet for the box set. Really, I mean, anything else, that's really all I'm really concerned with right now, is like trying to really pack, this booklet that I want to include. And really any writings, like, it was one thing Kevin and I talked about was we'd love to hear like people's experiences, or how they felt going to shows, or just anything they want to write about Dead Silence. We'd like to include some of that stuff too. So yeah, anything like that, feel free to, send it my way, and feel free to start kind of pushing to have them write some new music. I mean, right after we started talking about this, I was sent a file on our shared Google Drive with them, with a new kind of riff that they were working on. So, it's possible that, I do know they're interested in playing again, maybe not in the capacity they were before, but some new material would be pretty wonderful. So, if enough people start showing, interest, I think that might help.
Okay.
So,
well, listen, thanks a lot, Wayne. I totally appreciate it. And we'll put this on, on the page on Facebook. We'll put it on YouTube, because I know there's a lot of non-Facebook people, which I get. So that's totally cool. But
sure.
Thanks so much. And, by all means, if you need to reach out again, I'm whatever I can do. So.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me and spreading the word. I really appreciate it.
Okay. So, all right, I'm going to stop recording.